The crunch of boots on the regolith was the only sound. Lieutenant Commander Eros and Sergeant Major Tana took point, moving with the grace of worlds in orbit of their sun, followed by the rest of the squad, in Viro suits humming softly. Before them, the Acheron mining installation clung to the asteroid like a parasitic growth. A series of prefabricated habdomes, skeletal extraction towers, and the massive inert maw of the ore processor. The view was breathtaking, in a desolate, terrifying way. They stood on a narrow ridge of silicate rock. Below them, the asteroid's surface dropped away into a cratered valley where the pale, distant light of the sector's star did little more than define the harsh geometric shadows. The sky was diamond-studded black velvet, a backdrop against which the installation's unlit towers looked like tombstones. 500 meters, Eros said into his comm. Still nothing. No sentinel drones, no perimeter sweeps, no heat signatures beyond standby power levels. Tana's team was nervous. Rourke adjusted the pulse rifle on his shoulder. The ore they're pulling out of this rock is worth more than a small planet. You'd think they'd have a reinforced battalion and a full orbital defense grid. This is unsettling. Tana crouched by a jagged spire of iron nickel stone, absent-mindedly brushing grit from her gauntlet as she took in the scenery. Right. Unsettling is the word. 2 lines of defense and an active patrol every half hour would make sense, but no defense at all. That's more intimidating than a dozen automated turrets. She swept a hand across the horizon. Look at this sprawl. They've got 27 kilometers of surface operation, and the only thing moving is dust. Eros peered through his enhanced optics, his gaze sweeping over the vast, empty expanse of the mining operation. Maybe the sector governor pulled all their assets for the big conference on Aquila Prime. They're running on a skeleton crew, figuring no one's crazy enough to come this far out for a smash and grab. Wish I could agree, Commander, Tana murmured, pushing off the rock and resuming their advance. They crossed the final approach to the main processor dome, its smooth metal surface reflecting the distant stars. They were almost at the personnel airlock, an inviting, unguarded hole in the wall. Then everything changed. 1,000 floodlights roared to life, lending the installation and crater a blinding sheen. The beams were fixed, all pointed at Tana and her team of 6 operatives. Eros flinched, his night-adjusted visor flashing a visual overload warning. Trap. Fall back. As the lights solidified the terrain, though, they also revealed the figures that had been perfectly camouflaged against the dark rock. A horde of them, bristling with kinetic weaponry. They had been wheeling silently, unseen, closing around and behind the operatives like pincers. In the glare of the lights, Eros raised his rifle, but his voice was flat. Apparently, security wasn't as lax as we thought.
Hi everyone, welcome to Virtual Muse, the MST3K of RPGs, where I sit alone in space, playing games with a robot. Today, we're continuing our story based on Plan 9 from Outer Space, using Sharp Mountain Solo from Sharp Mountain Games. I'll include a card linking to the first episode, if you want to get caught up on where this started and how it's developing. Where we left it, Ruby and Zephyr had sneaked away from Professor Thaddeus' place to investigate. an abandoned warehouse that Ruby remembered Vampira mentioning. They confirmed that the warehouse was indeed Vampira's sanctuary, finding various relics and art gathered there, including a crystal pendant which Ruby took, and a makeshift living space in the loft. The odd, disorienting quality of Vampira's collection reflected her own eclectic personality, making it harder to discern what's real and what's just for show. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, or discern reality by looking at a warbled image in a funhouse mirror. Clues found on a corridor suggested Vampira's interests and intent. A quote, "All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream," by Poe, and a collage of old newspaper clippings about UFO sightings, including a reported crash near Red Rock Canyon. Ruby and Zephyr heard movement deeper within the warehouse, confirming their suspicion that the aliens were searching the place. They discovered two beings, an alien in a silver uniform and a hunched, ghoulish creature on a leash. A combat encounter began, with Ruby and Zephyr successfully dispatching the ghoul. The alien, outnumbered, threw down a flashbang device and escaped through a back door. We'll pick up at that moment. I imagine they rush into the darkness after the alien.
I can picture Ruby and Zephyr dashing through the dark corridors, their senses heightened as they try to catch up to the alien.
Do you imagine the alien has a plan, or is it reacting in desperation?
I think it could be a mix. The alien might have a plan to regroup or warn others, but its desperation could kick in if it feels cornered.
If it's trying to warn others, maybe there are more aliens in the warehouse.
Ruby and Zephyr could be walking into a trap. I picture them pursuing the alien into a dimly lit area with strange tech and devices scattered around. Maybe there's a holographic display projecting a large map of Red Rock Canyon, marked with strange symbols.
The Red Rock Canyon UFO crash site must be important. Vampire had saved newspaper headlines about it, and now the aliens have a map of the canyon. Maybe finding that crash site and salvaging something from it is a big part of the mission. I think I have an idea about what the connection might be, but we'll stick a pin in that for now and revisit it later. They barrel after the alien, and it leads them straight into a dimly lit room where two other aliens are looking at a holographic readout of a Red Rock Canyon map, which is being projected from a device on one of their wrists, studying unknown symbols and glyphs, speaking to each other in a language Ruby and Zephyr don't understand. The injured alien bursts into the room, speaking excitedly. The new pair of aliens look over. Let's say they have another of those ghoul creatures with them too. The first challenge for Ruby is not being seen immediately. I think since they're barreling forward and unexpectedly encountering more aliens ahead, it's more likely than not that they're seen. So this roll will be at disadvantage, meaning we roll 3d6 and take the two lowest results. Success. She matched her sneaking skill with that roll, so she manages to pull back from the doorway immediately when she glimpses aliens in the room ahead, and Zephyr follows her lead without missing a beat. The aliens don't see them moving in the shadows near the door because they're focused on the injured one who just ran up. But even if the two humans can't understand the language, Ruby and Zephyr know the injured alien is telling the others what happened, and that there are intruders in the warehouse. They see the injured one moving to the back of the room and the two others taking point, and Ruby knows that it's inevitable that they're going to come her way. I think she tries to act faster than them. I imagine her trying something like the cold open of GoldenEye, where Bond shoots a shelf and makes a bunch of empty barrels fall onto people below. She looks around the dimly lit room. She sees a shelving unit with lots of barrels and boxes, and takes a shot at it, trying to cause things to fall on the path of the advancing aliens. since she's trying to aim and take a shot at a specific target. This sounds like a ranged combat role, which isn't a skill she has, meaning she needs to get the default 8 to succeed with this. Failure. She takes the shot, but it misses and doesn't knock anything down. The aliens see her position from the muzzle flash of her rifle and start rushing towards her.
Not ideal. Missing the shot and giving away their position puts Ruby and Zephyr at risk. The aliens are likely closing in quickly.
Ruby turns and runs, grabbing Zephyr and pulling them along. This is a fitness challenge. Success. She and Zephyr run back through the warehouse the way they came. As they leave the hallway and get back to the main warehouse floor, there's an alien standing ahead of them with her blaster raised. Ruby and Zephyr skid to a halt. Ruby snaps her rifle up, but the alien screams for them both to duck. Ruby hesitates to comply, but Zephyr ducks and pulls Ruby down, right as the ghoul emerges from the doorway behind them. The alien shoots above Ruby's head and hits the ghoul between the eyes. It collapses. The alien yells for Ruby and Zephyr to head for the exit, and she'll cover their retreat.
It seems like they've stumbled into an unlikely ally. But can they trust her? And what's her motive for helping them escape?
I think Ruby hesitates to turn her back on the alien, but the alien insists that they make a run for it.
Zephyr is probably shouting to Ruby to just go.
I think Ruby's moment of hesitancy passes, and she and Zephyr run towards the exit, right as the alien begins to exchange laser shots with their pursuers, who are arriving at the doorway behind them.
Sounds intense. I bet Ruby's heart is racing as they make a dash for the exit. Is the alien covering their backs effectively, or are they starting to get overwhelmed by the incoming fire?
I imagine the alien keeps her cool and takes cover behind a crate, and takes quick, accurate shots, evincing tactical skill and training, and effectively blocks the other aliens who were pursuing Ruby and Zephyr at the bottleneck of the doorway. They hear laser shots being exchanged for a few more seconds after they get outside the exit. Then the building falls silent. Zephyr might say they need to go inside again and make sure that the alien is alright, but Ruby says that they need to get as far away from the warehouse as possible. The alien who helped them steps into view in the moonlight. Ruby jerks her rifle up and aims at the alien, but she raises her hands in a placating gesture and says something like, "It's alright, I come in peace." Ruby keeps her guard up. Zephyr, meanwhile, says the alien helped them escape, and even shot at the other aliens, so it must be on their side. The alien says they haven't escaped yet. They all need to move. Ruby says something like, "That's true, follow me." The alien says, "No, this way, follow me."
Sounds like a stalemate. Neither Ruby nor the alien wants to trust the other with leading the way. I imagine Zephyr tries to mediate.
So Zephyr cuts in and says getting away from the warehouse full of armed enemies and ghouls is the first priority, and they can worry about all the finer details later. I think Ruby sees the good sense in what Zephyr says, and they all run off as a group, getting as far away from the warehouse as they can. Maybe the alien says she has some kind of supply cache or ship they could head for.
I think the alien mentions a safe house or a hideout rather than a ship. Given the circumstances, she'd want to keep a low profile. I envision it as a nondescript, run-down apartment in a seedy part of town.
Maybe it's some kind of vacant room, or even a basement area in a seedy apartment building, which the alien found and has been using as the center for operations.
That sounds plausible. The alien could have scouted out a location like that to lay low and gather resources without drawing attention to herself. The alien leads Ruby and Zephyr through the fog, away from the warehouse in the industrial district on the outskirts of town, into a block of ramshackle apartment buildings. They move quickly and in silence. They reach the loading dock of one building and navigate past a half-full dumpster. The alien opens an unlocked back entrance and leads them inside the building, across the concrete loading dock, to a side door. She leads them down a short flight of stairs into another room. The area they enter is dark, dingy, and cramped, with flickering fluorescent lights overhead. There's some rudimentary furniture cobbled together from scavenged materials, and a bunch of odd equipment and gadgets scattered around. Definitely not the Ritz, but a functional hideout. I'm picturing exposed pipes, metal shelving units, and maybe some makeshift workbenches the aliens set up for her equipment and gadgets.
Once they're all safely inside the building, Ruby says something like, "Okay, start talking. Explain why you helped us, what your reason is for opposing the other aliens, why you speak English, everything."
The alien's expression changes, and she takes a deep breath before beginning her explanation. Her voice is calm and measured, which Ruby thinks suggests a rehearsed speech. Zephyr leans against a nearby wall, eyes fixed intently on the alien, listening carefully to every word she says, analyzing her tone, her expression, trying to gauge how genuine she is.
The alien says, as for speaking English, she doesn't really. She gestures to a device on her belt and says, "This computer is translating everything I say into language you can understand." She then says her name is Sergeant Major Tana, and she is part of a guerrilla resistance against the ruling regime which has the aliens under its brutal sway. I rewatched the original Plan 9 recently to catch what the aliens are called, or what world they come from, and I think those are both off blank. So we're free to fill those details in however we want.
For the aliens, I think something like Zraki could work. For the planet, how about Stygara? Alternatively, we could consider Kirithis.
Perfect. Sergeant Major Tana says she's from a guerrilla resistance force which is fighting to liberate Kirithis from the ruling regime which brutally suppresses any dissent or opposition, using fear and propaganda to maintain control. She says that 5 years ago, an insane rogue admiral of the Zraki fleet became convinced that humanity was advancing too quickly and launched what he said was a preemptive strike against Earth. He had loyal followers who believed his deranged stories about how humanity was going to destroy the universe with its unchecked scientific advancement. They tried to execute something called Plan 9, which involved using Kirithian technologies to raise the dead of Earth and create a zombie army which was under Zraki control and could be used against the Earthlings. The plan was that because Kirithian technology created the zombies in the first place, after the army had served its purpose, it could be destroyed at will. A small elite group of followers of the insane admiral ran a trial of Plan 9, raising 3 zombies to prove that it could be done, and that the zombies were nearly indestructible and easy to control by technological means. The trial went wrong and ended up proving that Plan 9 was too risky to attempt on a large scale. The ruling regime stepped in soon after the trial of Plan 9 ended in spectacular failure. They captured the rogue general and quietly swept his actions under the rug to avoid any questions about the competence of their supposedly perfect military. A few years have passed. Now, the ruling regime's incompetence is starting to show, and Kirithis is in turmoil. They're finding it impossible to maintain absolute control and hide their failures and mistakes anymore. So they're attempting to recapture the loyalty of all Zraki by uniting them against a common enemy. To that end, they're trying to revive Plan 9. The problem is, They've lost the technology for absolute control of the zombies. They can raise ghouls, but they can't reliably puppet them. That's why they're trying to find Vampira, to reverse engineer the lost technology that was used to create her in the first place. Sergeant Major Tana is intent on stopping this, so the regime can't go forward with their war effort, and their failures and incompetence will be on full display for all Zaraki to see.
This explains why Vampira is so crucial to their plans and why Sergeant Major Tana is risking so much to stop them. By taking down the regime's attempts to revive Plan 9, Tana hopes to expose their weaknesses and spark a rebellion among the Zaraki people.
I imagine Zephyr is astonished by all this and accepts it as true. Ruby, on the other hand, is skeptical and asks, if it's so important for the resistance to stop this, why did they send Tana alone?
Tana's face turns somber, and she says the resistance couldn't send a large team in case they got caught, and revealed that the resistance had broken the regime's encryption codes and was privy to their communications. Sending a small group was a calculated risk, she says, and her team's dropship experienced system failure upon entering Earth's atmosphere. She was the only one who walked away.
Ruby nods, accepting that answer. She finally relaxes her grip on the handle of her rifle, letting it hang by the strap on her shoulder.
Ruby's relaxation is a subtle sign that she's starting to trust Tana, at least a little bit. Zephyr notices the change and leans forward, asking Tana what their next move is.
That's a great cliffhanger to leave it on for this session.
If you enjoyed this episode, remember to like the video. If you want to see the next one, remember to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell.